Okay, well, again, welcome everyone to the Zotero workshop. My name is Anne-Marie Engelson. I am a STEM librarian here at San Jose State University. And today I'll be giving you a very hopefully short introduction to Zotero, and we'll talk about what it can do for you, why you should be using a citation manager, and we'll make sure that you're set up in Zotero and can add things to it so you're able to use it in your research and your writing. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, what we'll be doing is we will first talk a little bit about the benefits of citation managers and also how to choose a citation manager. Zotero is my personal favorite and the one that I choose to work with, but it's not the only one out there, and it's not the only one that we support here at San Jose State. So I want to make sure that you're using the correct one for your needs. And so I'll give you a couple of bits of information about the others just to make sure that you can select effectively. And then we'll go into Zotero. How do you set up Zotero, getting started, getting an account started, all of those kinds of things. And then we'll talk about how to organize your library to make it most effective for you, how to add sources, and then how to cite those sources using the Zotero plugin for Google Docs and Word as you're writing papers. It's the best part about Zotero. It's the one thing about it that when I talk to students and faculty or anybody really about citation managers and I show them this particular function, everyone, like all the feedback is always, I wish I knew about this earlier. And it was the same for me when I first learned about citation managers. It was after I'd been in grad school, and I just felt like I wish that I had known when I was in grad school, because I formatted all of my citations by hand for all of my papers and my thesis, and it just, nobody wants to do that. So Zotero will help you with that, and we will talk about how it does that. And then finally, at the end, I will have time for questions, especially more in-depth ones if you are unsure of how to use it with your particular style of citations or with your particular research, or if you have very tailored questions. I will have a little bit of time at the end for those. If you do have any questions, however, about the presentation or what we're working on in the time, please feel free to stick them in the chat, raise your hand, whatever you need to do to get my attention. I'm always happy to field questions in the middle of a presentation, no problem. So let's get started. So the main benefits of citation managers is that they are a tool that help you collect, organize, and cite your sources. Why this is helpful is because if you're the kind of person who maybe just has a file on your desktop, or even if you've been collecting paper sources for a while, those kinds of systems can be fallible. Citation managers often work on a cloud-based system, and so they're able to store things, and there's backups if you need them. Additionally, they allow for collaboration, and they also allow you to annotate PDFs within the system. But again, the best part about that is that write and cite feature that they have to allow you to cite things as you're writing things in Google Docs or Word. Additionally, their browser extensions make it so easy to collect things. It's usually a click or two once you have it set up. So as a system, it's really helpful when you're doing a lot of research and you might forget about a paper that you saw 10 minutes ago and you're like, oh, I wish I'd add that to my library, or I wish I had that. Just by easily clicking on things into your Zotero, it makes it so much easier to keep track of things that you're interested in. So when it comes to choosing a citation manager, I approach this like choosing a car. They all do the same functionality. They get you from point A to point B. But with cars, it depends on what you want it to do, what else you're working with, and also your preferences for, the interior and things like that. The same kind of goes for citation managers. They all do essentially the same functions, but they all have slightly different features and functionalities that would work best for different people. So I have the three that the SJSU library currently supports on screen, but there are so many other citation managers out there. If you ever wanted to look into them, just Google. There's so many. In fact, Wikipedia has a very big entry on all the different citation managers, and I think there's like 40 or something like that. But these are the three that we've got. I personally always recommend Zotero, and I'll talk a little bit more about why in the next slide. But we also have Paperpile that the library pays for. Zotero is free and open source, so it is free for everyone. If you leave SJSU, you are able to take your entire library with you, no problem. You don't have to pay for it later. In fact, I always recommend that you use your personal email or an email that you're going to keep after you leave SJSU as what you sign up with, just so that you're able to keep it later, and if your SJSU email goes away, you still have access to it. It does have 300 millibytes of storage standard. You can pay for more, and there is a possibility for an institutional license. So if that is something that you think is really important, please let us know and we'll look into it. It does have Write and Cite integration with Microsoft Word, Google Docs, and LibreOffice, which was formerly known as OpenOffice when I was in college. And it also has 9,000 different citation styles. I know you're thinking, I didn't know there were 9,000 different citation styles. They are often journal specific. So if you do a lot of writing for journals and publishing, you are usually able to easily format your citations to journal standards because they're all listed, which is fantastic. Paperpile is something that we also support at the institutional level. It is web-based and it is Chrome specific. So it integrates with Google Suite really easily, which we provide from San Jose State. That's what we use. So you are able to use your Google Drive as your storage. And so you have unlimited storage because Google for Education gives you unlimited storage. If you leave Google for Education, then you're limited by the storage in your Google Drive, which I think is 5 gigs at this point. It only integrates, I need to update the slide. It does integrate with Google Docs and Word. Word is still in beta. It is not a finalized form, but I've heard that it works fairly good, but it does integrate with Google Docs really easily. And it also has 9,000 different citation styles because honestly, they use Zotero's. RoughWorks is another one that we are supporting, but it is something that we are letting go of after this calendar year. So I don't recommend that you get started with it, but it is web-based. It's integrated with OneSearch. It is free to SJSU users currently. It does have unlimited storage and it does work with Word and Google Docs. And it has about 4,000 different citation styles. So why I recommend Zotero. As I said before, it's the one that I personally use. And after looking at many different citation managers, this is the one that I personally chose. And the main reason is my first bullet point under benefits. It is a free open source software that was created by the researchers at George Mason University in Virginia. It is now run by a nonprofit that was set up by those researchers to support scholarly applications like Zotero. So their main point is to create tools that help researchers. They're not after your data. They're very transparent about how they use their data, and they are just really good ethically as a company. And so that's why I get behind them. The Zotero Connector works beautifully. It gathers all of the bibliographic data that it needs to get to make those citations, and it does a really good job. It has over 9,000 different citation styles, as I said before, and many of them are journal specific. It has Google Docs integration, which is so useful considering that we use it for everything these days. It also has a citation generator, which I will show you in just a moment. If you are like not willing or not ready or unable to put time into like a system like Zotero and don't really want to create a library and just need like a quick citation generator, Zotero Bib works beautifully. I wholly recommend it over like Citation Machine or EasyBib because it uses Zotero software, and it is so good that I don't have a lot of trouble citing things through it. And also they're not trying to sell you anything. So again, your data is protected. It does create, Zotero as a system creates a snapshot or an archived copy of websites. If you are a researcher who relies on information from the web, it does archive those websites for you and puts them in your library for you. So I don't know if you've ever, had this happen, but sometimes websites change. And if you cite something in one of your papers and it changes and you didn't get an archived copy and it's not anywhere on the Wayback Machine or Internet Archive or any other kind of archival service, then you're kind of SOL, and it's not great. So I like that it does that, and it provides that security for people who are citing internet resources. And also, many different citation managers, RoughWorks, Mendeley, and Paperpile included, use open source software created by Zotero and the Zotero community. So when they upgrade their software, you're getting it from them first, and then the other places kind of upgrade their proprietary software. A couple of drawbacks with Zotero, though, is that it does not capture bibliometric data from websites very well, but that is standard across the board with citation managers. That's something that's kind of hard because it's not standardized on websites, like where all of that information should be. It kind of is, but not really. So it's hard for them to gather all that data, but it does make it easy to fix it after you've done that. It is not ideal for those who use Chromebooks because it does have that desktop app. They do have a web-based library that you can use, but it's more as like a backup, and it doesn't work so well as the desktop version does. So I recommend Paperpile for people who use Chromebooks because it's fully web-based. It can be confusing when selecting citation styles because it has over 9,000 of them, especially with Chicago. There's so many different versions of it that there's just a lot. So it does have a library, and it does show you what it will end up looking like. So it's helpful, but it can be difficult. And also, finally, it can lag when using the Write and Cite feature in Google Docs, especially when there are many citations inserted, but just a little bit, just enough so that if Google Docs didn't have automatic saving, you would be a little nervous. And that's only when you end up with, 40 or 50 citations in a paper, and you're kind of at the end. It just takes a second or two to kind of update, and sometimes that makes you worried. So if you're anxiety prone and you don't want to deal with that, Google Docs might be an issue. But in general, I do recommend Zotero or any citation manager to faculty and students with no hesitation. It is a system, and it takes up, it takes some time to set up, but ZBib is an option for on-the-fly citation. Okay, I did have a question in the chat from Virginia. Thank you, Virginia. And I think I just misspoke. Not bibliometric data, bibliographic data. So I'm sorry for misspeaking. It does not keep any of the citation counts or anything like that, although that is something that you could put notes in if you really needed to, but considering that they would update a lot, it wouldn't be as effective. But I'm sorry, I misspoke. Thank you for, oh, it's on the slide. Thank you for pointing that out. I will fix that. Okay, so before we talk about setting up Zotero, I do want to really briefly show you Zotero Bib just to get it out of the way so I don't forget. All of these sources and all of these tools can be found from my Citation Manager's Guide. I'm going to stick that in the chat for you, this link, so that you have it. And this is also where you can find the Zotero link, so you can download Zotero in a moment. On this guide, you'll find a lot of information, including all kinds of reasons why you might want to use a citation manager, my comparison chart, and then at the bottom of the page is a link out to Zotero Bib or ZBib. As I said before, this is a citation generator, so it works very similarly to Citation Machine or EasyBib. And what you need to do is easily just put a URL from the article or an ISBN from a book, a DOI, which is like an ISBN but for a journal article, a PubMed ID, an archive ID, or even a title, and it will try to search for it and find it for you. So I have an article here. We're going to be using this as an example later. So I'm just going to grab that URL and stick it in Zotero Bib, and it will cite it on the fly. And I think it does a fantastic job at this. So it defaults to MLA, but you can choose whatever style you need. And there's so many others. It's even upgraded to 10,000 different citation styles. So my information is a little outdated. But if I'm converting to APA, hopefully you can see this pop up. It does recommend that I check sentence case in the title of the article, just because that's something that sometimes citation managers have an issue with. And so it at least warns you, and it does change it for whatever you need to have. Additionally, Zotero Bib will create a running bibliography for you. So until I clear the cache of my browser, this citation will stay. So I can keep adding things and actually create a bibliography if I need to. So if I need a set or a couple of articles and I just don't have the time to set up Zotero, this is a good option. I also recommend this to students who, they don't write a lot. Maybe they only have a couple classes that they do research in. They're not going to go into research. Zotero Bib is a good tool. You can export it by copying it to clipboard. Additionally, if you click on these like double squares next to the citation, it gives you the in-text citation, and you're able to fix it if you need to, or add page numbers or whatever you need to do. So Zotero Bib is fantastic. Highly recommend. I'm going to stick that link in the chat as well. There you go. So let's get back to Zotero. So to start Zotero, the first thing that you need to do is download Zotero. There is a link to zotero.org on my Citation Manager's Guide, but I will also stick that link in the chat to just plain Zotero. And this is how we get started. So if you would like to, please feel free to follow along, but you can also, wait and do this later and just watch what I'm doing. But I'll try to build in a little bit of time for you guys. So Zotero is really easy to set up. It's just 3 quick steps. The first is that you need to download, and you need to download Zotero for your desktop. So it'll read whatever you have and give you options. And then also the Zotero Connector, which is the browser extension. The browser extension works with most browsers, except for Safari, because nothing works in Safari anymore. So if you use Safari on a regular basis, I highly recommend that you think about switching over to Chrome or Firefox or a different browser. Safari is not often supported by third-party apps and extensions and things like that because of Apple's policies. So just FYI. It does have a beta version, but it doesn't work very well, apparently. So Chrome is the best, Firefox is good, whatever you use, but highly recommend one of those two. Once you have those downloaded, then you will need to go up into the upper right-hand corner and find the register link and open that up. Quickly register for an account. You just need to include a username, whatever you want it to be, your email. I highly recommend that you use a personal email rather than your SJSU email, especially if you are a student, you're going to move on, or, if you're a researcher and you want to make sure that you have this available to you. You can change this later if you need to, but, whatever you want to do. And then create a password, make sure to tell them that you're not a robot, and register. Once you register, then you need to sync it to your Zotero desktop. So I'm going to change how I'm sharing to my full desktop and show you what that looks like. So this is Zotero. I've got lots of articles in here. And to kind of get set up and to sync your library, etc., you will go up to Zotero, go to Preferences in a Mac, and I'm using a Mac. It is up in the Zotero menu. In a PC, I believe it's under the Edit tab, but it should be under File or Edit, and you'll find Preferences. Once you are in Preferences, you will go to the Sync tab, and you will link your account right here. Mine obviously is already linked. In yours, if you've just downloaded it, it will have a username password field for you to put in your username and password and log in. There's also a couple of different settings that we might want to set up before we get started. The first is about syncing. So the way that Zotero works is that it has a cloud library, so that if you use multiple computers, or if you often switch between like a laptop and then you go to the library and you need your thing from like a library computer, or you borrow a computer or something like that, you are able to access your library because it's synced with the cloud. Because of that, if you have a lot of articles, you might need extra storage, or you might need to be selective about what you put in the cloud, but it can automatically sync your files. When you log in and you're connected to the internet, it will make sure that what you have on your desktop matches what you have in your online library, and vice versa, and make sure that they're the same, so that no matter when you log in, you still have access to all of your files, or the files that you choose. I also like to come in and look at PDF file handling. So if you are somebody who does need snapshots from web pages, I might suggest having them automatically take those snapshots. If you only use articles, or you don't think you're ever going to use websites like this, you can unselect that, and then it just won't keep that information, and then you won't just have that in your storage and it won't be a problem. Additionally, I would make sure that it has automatically attached associated PDFs that will grab the PDF from when you save it so that you have it available to you for the article. Additionally, I also recommend having automatically retrieve metadata for PDFs, super helpful. And I like that it renames attachment files using parent metadata so that it's easy to read and you don't have something that's just labeled file, and it keeps things together. And then the final thing that I look at is citation styles. It comes preloaded with the general citation styles that most people use, like American Medical Association, American Psychological Association, or APA, Chicago, MLA. That stuff is usually preloaded, and some of the more common ones like Nature is also loaded. If you need extra, you can go to Get Additional Styles, and it will open up this search box. And this is where it gets a little confusing. So for example, if I need a specific type of Chicago and I type in Chicago, there's 24 different ones. And so you need to figure out which one it is that you want. And this is where it can get confusing. If you ever need help navigating this, I'm happy to do so. Just reach out and we can talk about it. But there's lots of different styles. And then you just click on the one that you want to add and it will add it to your style manager. And then you just have it available whenever you need to cite something. And that is what I use just to kind of get started. If you are using Microsoft Word for most of your papers, you'll want to double check that the add-in is installed. It should automatically do so when you download your desktop application and add it to your Microsoft Word. And it should be fine. If there's ever any glitch in the add-in, my recommendation for fixing that is to uninstall it and then reinstall it, and you'll do it from here. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far about getting started with Zotero? Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about organization of your library and some of the, I would say, like best practices for making sure that you're able to get what you need and have that information. And I'll give you a little tour of Zotero. So as I said before, this is my library. I primarily use this one for teaching. I personally have like a second one that I use on a different machine that I use for my research, just in case. I don't want that getting messed up when I'm teaching. So I'm very cautious with that one. But all of these folders that I have on the side are a way that you can organize your citations and create things. Okay, I do have a question in the chat. It says, mine says use classic add citation dialog. What does that mean? I'll be honest, Shelley, I do not know. I will come back to this question at the end, unless it's not letting you move forward. And we'll figure it out later. One thing that I love about Zotero is that it has a really passionate user base. So if you ever have any issues, if you just Google the issue, there is someone who's figured out how to solve it on the internet. So I've never had a problem that I wasn't able to solve in Zotero, which I find really nice. So a quick Google search will help. Great, cool. So in your library, there's a lot of different ways that you can organize your citations. I usually use folders. They technically call them collections, but they're folders. So I'm going to use the term folders, and I am sorry for that. But when they say collection, they mean folders. And libraries. So your library is your general, your main account. However, you can also create group libraries and share your libraries with your collaborators, and you can create whatever kinds of group libraries that you want to do. That can be done through the Zotero website once you log in, and also up here. So when you want to add a new library, there's two buttons up here. One is a manila folder and one is like the more craft paper folder. The craft paper is for libraries. And so if you want to add a new group library, you click here, it'll send you to the website and send you through a process. It's really simple. All you need to do is set it up and then add the emails for the people that you want to collaborate with you. In addition, you can create folders within your libraries and subfolders. So if I wanted to create a new folder, I would click here and it would add a new one. You can organize it however works for you. I tend to recommend to students that you organize it by class and then by paper, or if you're a researcher or doing a bigger projects, you can organize it by topic. You can also create like a to read and then move it into a red folder. You can organize things based on whatever you need that makes sense for you. I have all kinds of different folders here. If you do have a folder that's like a class-based, you can create subfolders by right-clicking, and then you create new subcollection. You can also export collections as and send them to other citation managers or send them to other people if you need to. The general citation manager file format is called .ris, and that is what usually most of them read. You can also create a bibliography from collections from this environment. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Once you have your folder set up, and I recommend that you do that before you start researching, then you can start adding things to them, and it makes it so much easier for you to organize and put things in, in a system. Additionally, down here, you'll see that it has tags. These are used like any other kind of hashtag to group things within a specific topic. I recommend using these for things that would not be related to your folders or might apply cross folders. I highly recommend that if you're doing something like identifying whether articles are quantitative or qualitative research, you can create tags, and that works really well. You can also create other kinds of tags to help you easily find things. And when you click on them, they do open up, show you the articles that are related. It does automatically populate tags from the databases when you add them. They're usually based on the keywords that are created for that article. So you'll notice I've got a ton. I didn't create all of these. They're just added when you put them in. That is another option that you can change in your preferences. And then finally, one more thing that I want to show you before we move on is my publications. If you write publications, you can keep them in here and have them ready to go. If you have to put something in a CV, it makes it so easy. I like it a lot, so highly recommend. There's also, if you use APA style, there's like an APA CV style that organizes them by date in the bibliography, which I think is really helpful. So people have thought of that. Okay, so now that we've organized our Zotero library, the next step is to then go add stuff to it. So let's do that. I have a lot of slides in my slide deck. These are for your reference if you need them later, or for anybody who wasn't able to attend. The slide deck will be available with the recording on the Citation Manager's Guide. So, oops. Here we go. So there's 4 general ways that you can add sources to your library. The first way is to import a previous library into Zotero. So if you've been using another citation manager, you can just import your entire library. I do have a section on the Citation Manager's Guide about how to export your stuff from a library. So if you're using RefWorks and you want to switch over to Zotero, you can export your RefWorks library and then move it to Zotero. One thing that kind of sucks about that is that when you do that, the folder systems don't stay if you do it as a whole library, but you can export folder by folder and then add it into Zotero so you keep your organization system. So you can import from a previous library. You can use the Zotero Connector browser extension to add sources directly from the website. You can drag and drop a PDF into your Zotero library, and it does this magic wand trick and like grabs all of the bibliographic data from that. And you can manually add a source into Zotero, usually needed for websites, or I like to kind of start with the connector and then edit with the websites, but you can manually add a source if you need to. Please note, for all modes, Zotero Desktop does need to be open. Obviously, if you're using Zotero to manually add a source, but also if you're using the browser extension, Zotero needs to be open in the background for it to work. It'll prompt you to do that if you haven't. So I just always recommend that you open Zotero before you start researching in the library and want to add stuff to your library. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do these in the environment. So these slides are for your reference for later, but let's go back to Zotero. If you have a library from another citation manager, all you need to do is go to File and then Import, and that will import an entire library. The best way to do that is with an RIS file, as I mentioned before, this one right here, but it does accept BibTeX, RDF, and usually some others. If you use Mendeley Reference Manager, it does do an online import directly from there. But usually the RIS file is the best way to do that. You just click that and then select it and then import, and it'll pop in. And that includes if you're doing it file by file or folder by folder, rather than the whole library at once. Okay. So what was my next one? Oh, the browser extension. Okay, so the browser extension is the easiest one than anything else because it is a really quick one-step thing. And it makes it really easy to do. So I'm going to head into an article from OneSearch. This is our catalog, our searching engine from library website. I just did a quick search for like sea otters, and I found an article, and I'm like, I want to add this to my Zotero library. I would highly recommend that you do not add it from this page, which is the record in OneSearch. We call any kind of entry in our catalogs a record. It does have an export RIS file like button that you can use, but this is not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to actually click out into the article. If for some reason we don't have the article and you have to get it from interlibrary loan, you can start an entry in Zotero from here, but it doesn't like it very much. So I always recommend that you click out, but if you can't and you need to start it from here, you can do so and then just add it later. When you install your Zotero connector, it will pop up as an icon in here. If you do not see it, click on this little puzzle piece and then find it in your extensions list and click on the pin, and it'll pin it to your browser. So it's always there. Okay, so when I decide to add this article, though, I will want to link out. I went directly from PLOS, which is the publisher. I find that that's usually the best way to go, but whatever one you're going through is fine too. Or if you're in a database, click to where the article is, where you can download the PDF. This is what you want. When you add an article or any source to Zotero, the Zotero connector changes shape depending on what it sees. So I've got a piece of paper here, and that's because it's seeing an article, and this is the article icon. When you see a piece of paper like article like that, you know that it's going to gather that information correctly. So if I'm adding an article, I'm always going to look for this piece of paper. If you notice here in the in OneSearch, it's a book. And that means that it sees this as a book. And so it's going to collect the information about this source slightly differently. And so it might not get everything that you want. So that's why I always recommend that you go here, because it'll get the information correctly and it'll grab that PDF for you. So if I want this article, all I need to do is click on it. It will save to my library. If I want to, I can actually add it to a specific folder. So I've got a Sea Otters folder, so I'm going to stick it over there. And if you have a folder open on your Zotero, it will default to that folder. So if you know you're going to be doing research and putting all of those papers in a specific folder, open it up in your Zotero library, stick it in the background, and then anytime you click that button, it will automatically add it to that folder, which makes it easy. And if you do have something open and that's not where you wanted it to go, obviously you can just change it, but just know it's going to go there. Okay, I do have a question in chat. So the question is, if I want to use it on Google Doc, is it better to use Connector instead of downloading it to my own drive? If you mean the PDF, that would not matter. But if you are using Google Docs to cite your articles, you will want to add it using the connector to Zotero. You want it in your Zotero library. If an article is not listed in your Zotero library, it's not going to cite it for you. So you'll need to have it there. If the PDF is located in your Google Drive, that will not make a difference. What it needs is this, entry that has all of this information in it. We'll talk a little bit about this in just a moment. So hopefully that answers your question. So you'll want to use the connector to get that entry into your Zotero library. And then where the PDF lives doesn't really matter, but you can keep it in Zotero, and there are some benefits to that, which we'll talk about in just a bit. So maybe when we talk about that, it'll kind of make it a little bit more clear. Okay, cool. So we added it from the browser connector. You can also drag and drop PDFs into your Zotero library. So if you have a PDF, I'm going to move a couple windows here to make space, find that PDF. Here it is. Okay, so if I have a PDF and I haven't added it anywhere, I can literally just drag it and drop it into my Zotero. And got a bit of a lag, sorry about that. And do you see how it like magically just added it as an entry? This is one of the coolest things that it does. I think it's magic, it's wonderful. So if you have a whole bunch of PDFs on your computer and you just need to add them to your library, you can literally drag and drop. The only caveat is that if the PDF is quite old, so it's something from, I would say pre-2010 even, you don't know if it's pre-2000s unless it had been digitized by the database recently, there might be problems. Additionally, if it is a scanned copy of an article that was put into a PDF, it likely will not work either because it doesn't have that metadata embedded into the file that it needs to have in order to get this information. So if you download something from a database, that's the best way. It'll always read those, but time and what kind of file it is play a factor. Okay, and then finally, you can manually add a source to Zotero. So if you click this green plus button up here, you can add any kind of document. It will give you an option to just add all of this information here on the side. So this is a good segue into my next bit, which is what information does it get and what's here and what can I use? So when you add, I'm just going to get rid of this one really fast. When you add a citation, what it will grab for you and what information it contains in each of these entries or records is the basic bibliographic information that it needs to cite it. So it has an item type just so that it knows what kind of citation style it needs to use. The title, authors, abstract, publication, so whatever journal it is, volume, issue, pages, whatever it is, depending on what kind of source it is. So books, dissertations, conference proceedings, whatever it is, it gets different information. It also will usually grab a URL or a DOI. So if you need to get back to that article, you can just click on this, copy it, paste it in a browser, and you can get back to it. And if you ever need to change any of this information, you can do so in this environment. So for example, I keep this one and I don't change it just as an example. Here is an article that I grabbed from Google Scholar while preparing something for a faculty member, and you can tell that this title is in all caps. If I used the citation, this write and cite feature, I try to cite it using Zotero's tools, it won't fix that for me because the output of the citation machine or the citation generator is only as good as the information that's put into it, right? So I would have to fix this and at least put it into sentence case is the best because I use APA and I know it's going to need to be sentence case, so it'll kind of help it along. But I wouldn't want to keep anything in all caps. So if that happens to you, all you need to do is click on it and you can go in here and you can fix it. Literally just fix word by word or letter by letter. And that should fix it. And then if I needed to, I can also add whatever extra information. This didn't get a lot of information. I grabbed it from Google Scholar. I literally just got a title, an author, and a date. That's not enough to cite anything. So I would need to put more information in here or change what kind of thing it is. I believe this might have been not a journal article, so I'd also want to change that too. It just depends on what happens. Okay, additionally, in every entry, you can also have notes. These notes will hang out down here. So I recommend using them for like quick things that you need to know about that article. So like, you know, this is also a good place to be like, it's qualitative study or something like that. Or, you know, any kind of notes that you want to be quick and read really fast, because it's just going to be here and you can see it as you're scrolling through your articles. It also will have all of the tags for that article, so you can add whatever you need. And then you can also add related articles and just kind of create links to other things, even if they're not in the same folder, just for your own organization. Okay. Does anybody have any questions with that? Okay. Move through things. So the final thing that you can use Zotero for is to annotate your sources. So usually when you are reading an article, you might want to highlight things, make comments. I always highly recommend as a librarian, especially if you're new to writing and working in research, or even if you're old hat, anytime that you're reading an article and you plan to use it as a citation for your writing, I always suggest that as you are highlighting sections or you are taking notes, anytime you highlight, always translate that into your own words as a comment or in this margins or whatever, so that when you are using that source in your writing, you're using your notes rather than the language from the article itself. And that helps you kind of prevent plagiarism, even if it's unintended. I think that sometimes we don't want to plagiarize, but we rely too heavily on our sources. And so there can be some gray areas there. So that helps a lot, especially when you're just starting to work in academia or you're just starting to write and you're having problems. That's a really good tip and it helps. Luckily, Zotero has some tools that can help you with that. So one of the cool things that they just added, it's brand new. I was literally in a session teaching it to students when I found this out and I was very excited, is that you can annotate PDFs within Zotero. So there's two different options when you're working with PDFs and Zotero. It will open either in Adobe Acrobat or whatever PDF reader that you have as set as default for your computer. Mine is Adobe Acrobat. But it also will open in its own environment. So this is what it looks like. Obviously, I've already done some annotations. So from here, you can highlight, you can comment, you can color code, you could do lots of stuff. So it'll have a list of all of your annotations over on the left, which I quite like. And if I wanted to highlight something, I would just click on the highlight tool and then, you know, go to the section down here and I'm like, oh, I need to remember this. Highlight what you need. And then if you want to add a comment, which I highly recommend, all you need to do is go there and then you can write in your comment. So, you know, this means whatever, or translate it in your own words. And then you'll have these here and they're listed. You can also, and I think this is really cool, I've never seen this before, just kind of like box in sections. This is also really helpful if you know, need to remember like this section's really good. And then you can also color code if you need to and like create a green one. Boom. I like it. And then it gathers all of your annotations on the side so that you have it available to you when you need them and you can kind of sort them however you want. I think it's cool. It also will have all of the information on the side and tags, whatever information that you have available. And then you can see notes from this item and then also from any other article that you have. Okay, any questions about the annotation section? When you open up articles in Adobe Acrobat, it will also give you those tools. So if you don't use that within Zotero and you would rather use Adobe Acrobat, that is also a possibility. Like these tools are also here for you. So highlighter, comments, that's available. It doesn't have that cool square box bit, but it has the other things that can help you annotate as well. So if you're not using the Zotero connector to read them, you can still use this. Okay, so let's talk very briefly about citing things in Word and in Google Docs. So you can do a couple of things to cite sources from your Zotero library. The first is to do it directly from the library. So if I just needed one quick citation or even a couple, all I need to do, you could do it by the folder or by item, is right-click, click on Create Bibliography from Item, select your style. Citations always means in-text citation. Bibliography means that full citation at the end of your paper, and then copy to clipboard. Or if you just need to print a list, you can also print a folder and it'll just give you a list of citations. I've used that before in teaching. And then you just push OK, and then you can just paste it wherever it needs to go. So I have a sample paper here, and so I'll just stick it here really fast just to show you. It does it. Boom. And that is very helpful. Okay, the second way that you can do it is while you're writing, and this is the best one. I use it all the time. Super helpful, highly recommend doing this. It does the exact same thing in Google Docs and in Word. So I'm just gonna show you Google Docs, but I promise you it looks exactly the same in Word. So there will be, once you install the extension to your browser, it will automatically find it when you open up Google Docs and give you a menu. And then when you're writing, you write your paper, however you write, and then add your citations when you need to. So I write a sentence, my cursor's where I want the citation to be input, and then I would just click on Zotero, add edit citation. The first thing that it will do, okay, is ask me what type of citation style I want to use. I default to 7th, so it's always kind of ready to go. Push OK. And then you're going to search for the article, whatever you want to do and however you want to search for it. So I'm just going to search for Cite, grab a couple from that. And then that one's good. And there it is. And then my second citation, same steps. It'll tell you usually what you've already cited. Didn't seem to want to do that right now, but usually it'll give you like a what I've already cited. Maybe I'll do that next time, but just select whatever you need to do. If you need to put 2 in the same one, yep, Allison, you just preempted I'm going to answer that right now. You can. So let me do it for this one. So if you are citing multiple sources at a time, which does happen, happens all the time. So sea otters. So here it tells you what you've already cited. Very helpful. Thank you. And so I'm just going to grab one and then I'll do another search. And you can just add as many as you need in this red box. And then as soon as you've got all the ones that you want to cite, you just push enter and then it'll add them and it'll organize them however it should be organized. So it does a good job of keeping track of what it should look like in the style of citations that you need it to be. Once you have all of your writing, you've done all of your references, you've got them all put in, then you need to go back to the Zotero menu and hit Add Edit Bibliography. This will populate your bibliography for you. Boom. It's so cool. I love this. It's the best part. One caveat is that citation generators as a whole, all of them, have difficulty with the casing in titles, especially with APA, because you need to have sentence case, which means that only the first word needs to have a capital on it, and then any proper nouns. So as you can see with this first one, it got it wrong. But all you need to do is go in and you can actually fix it. So you just go in and change. and that helps. So I always recommend that you double check and make sure that everything's correct. This one looks good, except for the scientific names. That one looks good. This one I would also have to fix. So you can go back in and do that really easily. However, if you know that you're going to add more citations, anytime that you add more and you refresh, it'll go back to the original. It'll go back to the original thing. And I see a question. I'm going to get to it in just one moment. I'm going to just one more thing, document preferences here. If you decide that you used the wrong citation format, or if you submitted an article to a journal and they were like, sorry, this doesn't quite fit, I need you to submit to another one, you can change the citation style really easily. So I have APA now. If I wanted to switch over to, for example, CSE, which is used in the STEM fields a lot, I'm a STEM librarian, all I will need to do is select it, push OK, and it will upgrade or update my document and change it for me. Boom. However, I would still need to go back in and double check that everything's correct. Same problems that it has. Okay, so question in chats. Having an issue with permissions on Google Chrome is connected to my personal Gmail account, but I cannot use Google Docs and connect to Zotero for my SJSU account in the same browser window. Oh, you might be, are you able to add another account from here? So if you click on your little picture, if it's like, if you don't have a picture, it might be some initials. Try adding another account in here. I've never had an issue using Zotero in either. Another workaround is if you go into your preferences, you can add another, I think it's in the Zotero in here, if you log in and go to your account settings after you log in. I'm not going to do that for privacy purposes for mine, but if you log in and you go into your account settings, I think you can add a secondary email address. And so that might be a workaround too. So try those two things and see if those work. And if they don't, shoot me an email and we can look into it a little bit more. Okay, great. Another email or another question in the chat, is it going to create a link for the in-text citation that will direct the specific reference in the referenced list? No, it usually does not do that. From what I understand, if you are sending that to like if you want that article to be published somewhere, like that kind of formatting happens when it's formatted into a PDF. I have not seen that happen with Zotero, but to be completely honest, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But you can edit them in this environment. Once you like download this paper or want to print it, it unlinks so that it doesn't mess up any formatting after you print it. You can also do that. Oh, geez. Let me move this around a little bit, sorry. You can also do that in the menu too. If you need to unlink the citations, you can do that here, but it doesn't automatically link them for you. From my understanding, that happens in the publishing process, or if you like put it somewhere, but I don't know if EndNote does that or if any other citation managers do that, but the ones that I use don't do that. So sorry that that's not a good answer, but I hope that answers your question. Okay, another question. So how can I have a citation like, and you give an example like authors with a comma year. So if you need to do that, what you can do is in Zotero, you can edit the citation. And I know there's a way to do that, but I don't need to do that very often. So let me see if switching to MLA will give me that answer. And if not, I will look into this and I will email you the answer, because I'll be honest, I have not had this question before. If it is the style that you need to use, that will be automatic, but I understand that, so I work in the STEM fields, and so they don't do citations like that very often, but I know that in other fields, humanities and social sciences, it's very common, but it's not, now it's glitching. There, wait, maybe. Got a bit of a update situation, maybe that'll fix, but I know that there's a way to do it, and I just need to figure it out. I know for sure there's a way to do it in Zotero Bib. That is a possibility. When you click on here, it gives you the option. So omit the author. So I would just need to figure out how to do it in the Word environment. Document preferences, maybe. Nope. I'll figure this out and I will email you back. Sorry. Do I have any other questions about citing in Google Docs or any of the other parts of this the presentation? Because I'm honestly got 3 minutes and I'm almost done. Okay. So my final, oh, thank you so much, Allison. So my final thing to say is that if you need help with Zotero, there are many different ways that you can get help. Let me get this out of the way. The first way is to contact us in the library. I am always happy to help. I am a very good point of contact. Let me put my email in the chat for you guys. It's there. It is also on the Citation Manager's Guide. You can find it on the home page. Here's my email address and my phone number for my office if that's what you like. Just FYI, I do work from home some days of the week. And so it might take a second for me to get back to your phone message, but my email is the best way to get in touch with me. Additionally, because Zotero is an open access and transparent software, all of its support happens on its website through the forums. They do not have like a support contact that you just email. It all happens right here on the forums page. So if you're having difficulty with anything with Zotero, I highly recommend just searching for it in Google. Somebody's had that problem and there's always a solution. It has a very dedicated and popular fan base that does a lot of work with workarounds. They fix things. Like, people really care about Zotero and they do a lot of work with it. And I really love that. I think it's great. They also have a lot of documentation for really easy fixes, especially things like problems downloading and stuff like that. They've got a lot of tips and tricks to help you with that. So that's all here. If you're still having issues, I'm always happy to help you troubleshoot and figure out what the actual problem is if you need that help. So if anybody has any more in-depth questions, please feel free to stay on. I've got a couple of minutes after this. I'm happy to answer them. If you have any other questions that you think of later, please feel free to send me an email. And if not, thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate that you were here, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, guys.